Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today where we will be discussing building the pharmaceutical supply chain of the future. My name is Daniel Carcetti. So happy to be joined by Diane, Anne-Marie, and Mike. Thank you all for joining me today. I think it's safe to say that 2020 and 2021 are clearly years that we will not soon forget. These last 24 months were filled with unimaginable change caused by the pandemic. The pharmaceutical industry and the world witnessed a perfect storm. A significant disruption in terms of business continuity, operational visibility, remote work, employee safety, and the really list goes on and on. But prior to the pandemic, supply chains were already experiencing many challenges. I think the pandemic really just augmented the supply chain risk, exposing the weak areas and lack of end-to-end visibility, external collaboration, amongst others. And we know the importance for pharma companies to have supply chain visibility, to ensure availability of inputs, effective collaboration with value chain partners, track and trace the care provider and the role that they play getting the product to the patient. Because in the end, it's all about the patient, getting products to the people right when they're needed. And digital ecosystems can play a role here. And Mike, your book, Rewire, covers how a digital ecosystems playbook can drive organizational change. Can you define digital ecosystems for our audience today and speak to how they can support the pharma industry?
Yeah, absolutely. And, first, thank you for the invite, Daniel. It's great to be here with you and the rest of the panel here. Very humbling. So first and foremost, so you asked about, what is digital ecosystems? And, when we look at digital ecosystems, the word ecosystem is not new. We've seen ecosystems in the past spring up, maybe not in the most efficient way. And so when we look at digital ecosystem, it's really about embracing the complexity of endless connections. As we know, today's world is, everything's connected all the time, everywhere. And it's vital to have our organizations be self-organizing, dynamic, and adaptive that leverages advanced technologies like, let's say, blockchain or mixed reality technology or quantum computing to really maximize and create new value exchange networks. And I really want to emphasize the new value exchange networks because the old ecosystems, they've done a good job of getting us by with some of those existing systems. But when we talk about the new ways of interacting, the new way our supply chains, need to integrate and react and have visibility across it, it's vitally important. So for pharma, digital ecosystems have been increasingly relevant since the onset of COVID. As many as 68% of healthcare organizations say that they must embrace highly connective digital solutions. And so that's a lot of organizational leaders saying that, hey, we need to make sure that we have full visibility across our supply chains. And so with that combination of understanding that fraudulent behavior and counterfeit drugs across our supply chain to consumers having the ability to control their own data and having their privacy protected as well. And so digital ecosystems is really bringing together data in new and rich ways. And it's more of a business challenge than a technology challenge at this point.
Diane, GSK and Microsoft, we've been partnering together on the company's digital manufacturing transformation and smart manufacturing. Mike just spoke to how digital ecosystems provide that interconnected data platform, if you will, to unify partners. You talk about third-party data sources and so forth. Can you talk a little bit more about GlaxoSmithKline's partner strategy? What are the critical capabilities you're looking for in a collaboration partner as it relates?
Yeah. Thanks, Daniel. It is, GSK is going through quite a transformation from a company perspective, and as we do that, we are changing our overall network. So what we manufacture internally versus what we source now from CMOs, and we're also going to market with new product lines that we've never had before. So new technologies, new modalities, and so that's really driving a significant amount of change to our overall supply chain network and our strategy as it relates to partners. I think we used to be a company where we were probably predominantly vertically integrated, and we would manufacture what we built or developed, And now we're going to market almost with a mixed model where we will choose to do some of it internally and we'll do some of it with partners externally. And so there is a lot of change in our overall supply chain network and how we work with partners to be able to bring those medicines to our patients. And so that visibility is really key. We do use Microsoft Azure to enable that visibility today. So we have essentially a supply chain network control tower that we have visibility of all of our partners from a supply chain perspective, and we kind of manage our inventory that way. The other thing I'd say is, there's additional partners in the network that help us really understand, I would say, the resilience of our partner, of any supplier that we have or any CMO that we're working with. So we now can predict disruption that might happen in the network, and that's another use of technology that has helped us. And with sustainability is another, right? So we have a partner group that we work with that is helping us drive sustainability not only within GfK but within our overall supply network, including our partners there as well. I do appreciate Microsoft's partnership approach, right? Anything you take, I mean, you talk digital ecosystems, no individual group can do everything on their own anymore. And so partnership is so critical in the technology space as well. And so we have a number of strategic partners within GfK, Accenture, and Microsoft are two of them. But I also appreciate how you as partners now are working together versus trying to do everything independently or kind of like with a point and spoke with us at GfK. I think that collaboration of the external technology partners is really critical to success as well.
Yeah, and Anne-Marie, clearly you're a partner of GSK's along with many other pharma. Can you talk a little bit about what, we when we look at the pandemic and what's happened, one of the things I think that's happened is really the rapid speed of product development, certainly in the last 2 years. It's staggering to see what's happened, and that obviously the impact on supply chain there is a role, and technology plays a key role in that. Can you talk a little bit about what Accenture's seen in the industry now in terms of the rapid speed of product development relative to how it's impacting supply chain with some of your clients?
Yeah, and I think to echo what you said, Daniel, the last 2 years have just been incredible for where our industry and has made the impossible possible. I think you've heard that term used probably extensively. But when you think about what it took to launch the vaccines and the antivirals and all of those new ways of operating, it really is driving a step change for the supply chain. And we think about it in the sense of the 3 R's, and in many ways echoing what Mike and Diane have said, which is relevance, resilient, and responsible. And so in thinking about the supply chains of the future for our industry, you look at the relevance of where supply chain is now so front and center. And we've also, though, did a survey of chief supply chain officers, and over 70% came back to say how these supply chains have historically been constructed, which was to, as we all know, manage cost, quality, and never kind of be out of stock, creates a ton of, many ways, inefficiency and also carbon emissions in the sense that you've got product that is produced in one country or drug substance, API, in one country, gets shipped to America, gets shipped back to Europe, and then distributed to the rest of the world. And that's not uncommon in our industry. And you think about the carbon footprint that drives, which speaks to the need for being more responsible. And then the resilient piece has been tested like no other. And I think you have mentioned the need for visibility, the need for simulation or scenario modeling, which there's a lot of solutions that we've built. In fact, we're partnering with MIT to build a stress test that's all built on Azure services. So kind of the first supply chain resilience stress test that's able to look at a number of factors and model them and understand kind of where you are and where your risk remains. So I think the future of where supply chains need to focus is really on these 3 R's, again, of relevance, resilience, and responsibility. In terms of digital technologies and how they can be applied, I think it's really how you bring those together in a multidisciplinary fashion.
What about control tower as it relates there? I
Yes.
mean, and I know, and Diane, you can kind of chime in here as well. I mean, can you talk a little bit, and Maria, about the control tower and the role that you see that playing?
And I think control tower also is used broadly. I think of it as an ecosystem or an orchestration of data. Right at the end of the day, it's how are you bringing data together from disparate sources, from other partners inside and outside of your network to lend and provide that visibility to what's happening in your supply chain, and then therefore allow you to perform kind of the analytics on top of that. So that's something. I think control tower, digital thread, digital twin, these are used extensively, and I think and they are, in its most simplest way, just how we apply technology and these digital capabilities that are here and now to give us broader visibility, to give us analytic power, to give us that predictability of what will be happening in the supply chain. And I love what Mike said, in the sense that it's not a technology change issue, right? It's a business change issue these days, because it's the technology's here, and it's more around the will and the desire of the organization and workers and professionals, supply chain professionals, changing the way they work and adopting some of these digital technologies.
Yeah, and Diane, I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about what you guys are doing at GSK around control tower and a global data platform?
Actually, Anne-Marie covered a lot of it, right? So we have a control tower at GSK that we use very similarly to manage the material across our network. And we've been able to drive, inventory reductions as a result of that, and better choices from a logistics perspective. To your point, Anne-Marie, it's kind of, we're almost making trades every day now because we have the capability to do so. So it's, does this need to ship air, or can we ship at sea? We can trade inventory versus cost and sustainability kind of goals in the same scenario planning. So those kinds of things can be enabled through that overall supply chain network control tower. You also mentioned digital twin, so I'll jump into that a little bit too, right? There's the, we bring that technology down to the manufacturing floor as well. And so we can use digital twins to improve the yield of our vaccines and our biologics manufacturing. And then also, within that control tower, we also actually, if we manufacture the products, we can get down to the point where we actually understand the material flow through the manufacturing shop, as well as, through the distribution centers or whatever shipping lanes that we may be in, and can start to use technology to really drive an increased throughput in our shops as well, if it's a secondary filling or a oral solid dose manufacturing plant, as an example, through driving improvements to OEE. So I think you can really take it all the way from shop floor equipment connectivity, IoT, all the way up to that top level supply chain network, and provide that full visibility and drive the right outcomes that are most critical to the business through that process.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what you're talking about is obviously not just unique to pharma. And Mike, your digital ecosystems work spans across industries, not just pharma. Can you talk about some insights maybe you've gleaned from both cross industry and pharma? Do you see the catalyst for digital ecosystems within pharma, or are they within pharma?
Yeah, I mean, and to act as the bridge from the previous question to this question, I would say that when we talk about control towers, even though intellectually amongst this group, we probably understand what we mean by that. However, when we have these business conversations with other partners that may not be as familiar with these constructs, is we also have to be careful in how we define the control tower construct. And what I mean by that is the notion of, we don't live in just one ecosystem, but we have, we will build ecosystems of ecosystems that will all have separate business models to drive value for that very specific and concrete problem that will interact with other ecosystems. And so in this world, there won't be one central control tower, but there will be many that will govern each individual ecosystem. And so I just want to make sure that we also understand that that is kind of one of the anti-patterns that I've seen across other industries, is that they try to create the one ecosystem to rule them all, when unfortunately, that these ecosystems need to be tailored and customized for the specific needs of the problems in which they're trying to solve. And what you'll find in a supply chain, you could have 10, 15, 20 different ecosystems across your supply chain to manage specific aspects of that supply chain. And so with the pandemic and everything that has ensued as a result, what we see from other industries is that digital ecosystems was looked at as a way to optimize cost. It was a way to embrace digital technologies, but it's also now to bring together things like hybrid work environments, being able to connect people in a more mixed reality oriented way. Because digital ecosystems is about the facilitation of information and reaching in and connecting in with whether it be a consumer, a product, or a process. And so we can take those concepts and apply it to pharma in very material way, as we've seen kind of the hybrid workplace, but also consumers demanding more control, more access to what is happening across the supply chain, and having that visibility and to be able to authenticate and say, yes, I know that this drug didn't come from a bad place. Or to what you said, Anne Marie, that this was shipped to me in a sustainable way and it didn't hop across the planet 10 times to get to me. And so those are key factors. But also, what we see from other industries is that you've got regulatory compliance, and pharma is no different. And when you look at things like the new the Drug Supply Chain Security Act, what you'll find is many of those requirements are tried and true capabilities that you would find in a digital ecosystem. Being able to establish provenance of a drug and know that, yes, it came from this source and this person signed off on it. Or I know that when that drug that needed to be part of a cold chain, that when it was en route to its destination facility, that the temperature of that truck never went below or went above a certain degree. And we're able to tap into those IoT sensors to be able to authenticate that, yes, that had happened. And so there's many of these business aspects that we see across other industries, whether it be, what I've said around hybrid, regulatory compliance, deep insights, but also at the end of the day, it's about making sure that our supply chains are durable. And, again, this goes back to the resiliency piece that Anne Marie talked about earlier.
Yeah, well, and a lot of what you said too, Mike, is really revolves around data, right? I mean, and the importance of data, and for GSK, Diane, I mean, you've always been a science-based company, and you continue to be. But what about the role that data is playing and analytics are playing in your company right now? I mean, can you talk a little bit about what you guys are doing with that in terms of platforms around supply chain and otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, so we do have, and we've talked a bit about the supply chain network and using the platform for data in supply chain to drive some of the outcomes that we've talked about already. Some of the other examples come in the R&D, and just because we are a science-based company, and you really want to make sure that you have new medicines for unmet need developed as quickly as possible. And Anne Marie already mentioned, right, with COVID and the new modalities, the world's moving faster than it ever has been before. And so we do have, a partnership with 23andMe that allows us now to, which we put in place in 2018. And so that allows us to basically use genetics and functional genomics to be able to identify targets faster. And so there's a goal there to be able to reduce the overall development timeframe by half in across the overall network and R&D development pipeline. We were actually talking today. We're starting to see those examples, and some of it's things where we're expecting it to take 2 years for a development that used to take 20. And we just had with one of our COVID therapies, actually, that we did with one of our partners, we were able to do in less than 10 months what it would take 3 years to do historically. So we are seeing real significant reductions of that overall cycle time and bringing new medicines to market. And it's all largely driven by having the data and the analytics available to drive that.
So I know we're almost at time. We were talking a lot about the supply chain of the future for pharma. I mean, Anne Marie, do you want to share kind of some final thoughts around what you're seeing? And we talked about how it's not about the technology, maybe about what the requirement of change management within your organizations. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing at GSK? And I'd love everyone to kind of chime in here, because I think we'd all agree it's not about the technology, right? I mean, the technology is here, it's available. I think the question is really change management and having the imagination to really implement it. And can you talk a little bit about, maybe in closing, what you're doing at GSK? And then I'd love to hear, Anne Marie, what you're kind of seeing across the industry.
Yeah, so from a change perspective at GSK, we're changing in many aspects, and we are changing in supply chain to be much more digitally enabled. I think that started for us, as it starts with many companies, with first proof points and examples, and you almost have to have those POCs in place to be able to get the organization to believe that there is value with digital. And as soon as you get past that point, you're able then to work with digital as more enabled in an operational way, and making sure that we also take a really pragmatic approach and focus on using digital to drive really clear business outcomes. And I think those are probably the 3 points of success that I would say that we've seen, not only in pharma, but in other industries, is that you start with the proof points, you can make it then operational, but always drive it towards clear business outcomes that are going to generate value. And those are the pieces that really enable it to stay and stick when you think through the business change management aspect, at least from what I've seen.
Anne Marie, what are you seeing with your other clients in that regard?
I think Diane summed it up perfectly in terms of having the underlying business case to adopt the technology, so that it's not technology for technology's sake or the kind of shiny object. To your question, though, Daniel, about what we're seeing across industry, it's interesting. We did a survey in 2019 of over 600 companies cross industry of their adoption, or what we would say their digital maturity index within operations. And life sciences fared fairly low, in the bottom quartile, in fact, of this list of about 12 or so industries. And we did the survey again end of last year, and life sciences, I would say, in many ways has leapfrogged and others in terms of this uptake, and kind of we're on the cusp 2 years ago of this pilot or POC kind of to now full adoption. And I think, it's a credit to COVID for driving this. And what we're saying broadly is that it's this realm or this era of compressed transformation that we're living in. And our industry is front and center of that, of how you more quickly, what took perhaps 5 years to scale some of these digital capabilities across the workforce is now being done in 2 years or less. So, and all of the technology capabilities of cloud, AI, advanced analytics, IoT, how do you bring those together in a multidisciplinary approach is really, to me, the secret sauce, right? So it's not just like the one-off POCs, but it's have from an architecture perspective, from a programmatic perspective, and from just thinking from across the workforce and the enablement of kind of your people to make that happen.
To build on that, I think you both of you hit on some really important points, and I'll be even more explicit, maybe even controversial. This is less of a technology problem; it's a people problem. And so what it requires are business and technology leaders, both of them, is to be comfortable being uncomfortable, meaning that this is new ways of doing business, and we have to experiment. And so what you'd find in what I wrote in the book and what I test out with many clients is the first step is to not start with the business case, but it's actually to start off with ideation. It's to explore the state of possible. It's to look at other industries as sources of inspiration to see if I can apply those things. So I'm not making those mistakes. I'm making educational decisions. And so going through and doing that envisioning, ideation-based work, what I often find is the original business case that was proposed changes significantly. And we might find, well, that particular area is not as strategically relevant to our business as another area would be based on the projection of the next 5 years. And so it's really critical to make sure that our leaders understand the value of, outside in thinking, ideation, and innovation management.
I think that's a great place to end. I really appreciate all of you for being here today. Thank you for your insights, and thanks for those attending today.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you.